What's up, Bills Mafia? Fernando Schmude here. That's your leading the charge. And today I have the pleasure of having Hansel alongside me to talk some Terrel Bernard, especially because we gotta talk our boy, right? And obviously, Bills and Dolphins preview, a great game ahead of us. Can't wait. Hansel, thank you so much for taking your time being with us, man. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm sure we're gonna have a blast with this leading the charge today. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Anytime I get to talk Bills is awesome. So at noon for me on a Friday, perfect time to talk about the Buffalo Bills.
Awesome. Always a good time to talk about the Buffalo Bills. And also, I think we even had to wait a lot since Sunday to finally be able to talk about our boy, Terrel Bernard. I think probably we have all Terrel Bernard fan club reunited in one screen today here, at least the fan club from before the last game, right? And
Yes.
I don't want to be unfair with other people from Bills Mafia who had believed in him, but from from people who are really active on Twitter and stuff, I really don't remember many people being so high on Terrell Bernard as we've been, Hansel. And so let's talk a little bit, our boy, because a really impressive performance, an AFC Player of the Week performance, a performance that the NFL in general hasn't been able to watch since Brian Urlacher, since James Harrison. Crazy kind of company to talk about a linebacker that we can't forget, despite personally talking, despite being so high on Bernard. I also expected a learning curve, some difficulties with being the first year as a starter in the middle linebacker spot. That's not a position that he has played a lot, even during his college days, different schemes for Baylor. So, were you expecting Terrell Bernard to exceed or to succeed so early in the season, Hansel?
No, I mean, absolutely not. And that's coming from somebody like yourself that's defended him kind of constantly on Twitter. But at the same time, I expected him to have to build up to learning the system fully, working and meshing with his guys. It's the hardest position, in my opinion, on the Bills defense. Is one, he's calling the plays. He's got the green dot in his helmet. And then two, he's got so much of the field to cover because he's the guy in the middle. And luckily for me, I was at the game. I was at the Commanders Bills game in Washington. You could literally see him. He's flying around. He's making plays. To have the game he had, like, it's not going talked about enough. I know he got AFC Player of the Week, but it's still kind of hush hush. Like, people don't even know his name still around the league, but Bills fans are starting to really realize who this player is.
Yeah, man, it was awesome, and I was really happy watching it happen in real time. I believe you personally being there live in at the stadium. It was really awesome, and but not just this game. This obviously with the stats and the way he played. That's the first game that people are really being like, okay, this guy can be the answer there. But also, I saw, man, it's so weird with him because first of all, I've never seen anybody being written off so before even having a shot.
Yeah.
And people were like, okay, what's Brandon Beane doing? Because he's drafting, stockpiling outside linebackers, Matt Milano backups and special teamers, and no Mike linebacker via free agency, no Mike linebacker at the draft. And what's this guy doing? And look, I'm not the biggest. I like Brandon Beane. I think he's a great GM, but I'm not the biggest homer. Like Brandon Beane can do no wrong, or McDermott can do no wrong. I like both of them. I like their job so far. Their work they've done as Bills general manager, head coach combo. But I'm not sitting out there and saying everything they do is correct, right? I have my own opinion. I was mad when they traded Taylor. It wasn't. I think that I was mad after Taylor became an all-pro. No, I was like, really? You are trading a second-year player who has started for you already, showed some promise, and to keep Spencer Long? Like, I wasn't really happy with that. So I sometimes call out Brandon Beane moves or McDermott, and sometimes also shout out to them for the awesome job. So I couldn't believe like a guy like Brandon Beane, a smart guy, would be picking linebackers in the third round behind a position where you just resign your best player in this defense nowadays, Matt Milano, and you are simply stockpiling backups for this guy, and not with those guys not being even considered to be a Mike linebacker option, So I was like, man, they gotta have a plan. They gotta have a plan for Bernard, maybe as the substitute for Edmonds if he leaves. And with Dorian, the same thing. I was like, okay, he doubled down. If Bernard fails, he has another one, and behind Bernard to be an option too. So I always had this line of thinking, and when being talked in that Chris Long podcast about how Edmonds could be exposed sometimes facing some twitchier guys and some fastest and quicker guys coming from the slot maybe, and because of even his size, I was like, okay, it makes sense with the way Bernard, the prototype of Bernard and even Dorian and Milano. So it made a lot of sense. But people were simply, no, I don't want to hear it. And no, Edmonds was huge and we need a huge middle linebacker. And they ignored, man. And Bernard never had a shot and they were written him off. I was like, what's going on? Why Bills Mafia can't accept that that's the plan, man? And the guy can't succeed there. I thought it was crazy. Even Dodson, even Spectre, man, they wanted to like everybody over Bernard, It was crazy for me, man. What do you think it happened, and how did you see the situation with him?
Yeah, I mean, you can just go back to the draft and people wrote him off the second he was drafted, right? We had Kyle Brandt come out there with the chicken wing in his pocket, take a bite of it and shout Terrel Bernard. And everyone was like, the heck are the Bills doing? What is Brandon Beane doing? And I'll be honest, like myself included, I saw the pick originally and I was like, this kind of weird. Like he seems like he's just going to be a backup player, but there was a plan. There was very clearly a plan with him. My minimum expectation was he was going to be a great special teams player and the primary backup at both positions, both Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds' position. Lo and behold, he's evolved over the past year. He's gotten better learning the system, and now he's actually got the shot to go play. But it is really weird that of all the players that Bills fans just decided to detest, like people literally just didn't like him. That's the weird part to me. Like you can't just take a player that's done no wrong. Like he didn't do anything wrong and just be like, this guy stinks. That was another weird narrative. People said like, oh, Terrel Bernard's bad. I don't understand where that came from either. Like you haven't seen him play. How can you tell me he's bad? And even last year when they played the Jets, that first game where they lost and Bernard started that game, he played decently well for his first ever NFL game, like his first real game. But people wanted to blame somebody for that loss. And instead of blaming, let's say, Josh Allen for throwing multiple interceptions, not having a great game, the blame kind of shifted to Terrel Bernard, which was really weird way to kind of, again, push him down. Fast forward, blah, 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 through all the stuff that's happened. And then we get to this preseason, and you're completely right. People wanted Balin Spector. People wanted Tyrell Dodson. People wanted A.J. Klein. I myself wanted a vet presence there just in case. But Terrel Bernard was the plan all along. It just so happened he was hurt all of preseason. And now he's paying dividends. He's not going to be as good every single week as he was last week.
Yeah.
But he's going to get better. Like he's going to slowly improve. He's going to get more consistent. And to your point about the Tremaine Edmonds situation, he might be the piece that the Bills actually needed there, where they're going to deal with a quick wide receiver like Tyreek Hill this week, just because Terrel Bernard's instincts are just so incredible. He's got that quick twitch sideways, like lateral movement that Tremaine Edmonds didn't have. And Tremaine Edmonds was a great linebacker, but I think the Bills kind of might have needed something different, and Bernard might be that guy.
Yeah, man, I'm also a big Tremaine Edmonds guy, and I used to like him when people were saying bad things about him, because also, Tremaine Edmonds is another interesting case. Like, after he left, man, he became Luke Quickly in his prime, He could do no wrong, and every pass completed in the middle of the field, it wouldn't be completed with Tremaine Edmonds out there because of his pterodactyl wings, and he would, But it's not true, man. And we saw, just like it happened with Bernard versus the Jets in last season, we saw with Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano playing the occasional games here and there when our defense couldn't stop the run to save their lives. And it happened. It always happens with those defense once or twice a year. Okay, just like the games where Josh Allen goes full crazy mode and throw a lot of picks. It happens with our defense too. So it was totally unfair, and they wanted to write him off so quick, and even without getting a shot, that I couldn't understand. And when Dorian was drafted this year, then a lot of people again, oh, here is our linebacker. And okay, where he was drafted, third round pick, 2 picks later than Bernard in a class that was considered weaker than the previous year class at linebacker. So I was like, okay, the guy from the third round now, 2 picks later, and in a weaker draft class can be the answer right away. But the guy who sit behind Edmonds for a year, was in every team meeting, was in the linebacker room all the time, was learning from Milano and Edmonds all the time. Mm-hmm. This guy has no shot at being the guy. But the guy who just got drafted and gotta learn the game and gotta adapt to the NFL, that's ready to contribute and be the middle linebacker. So it made no sense, man. And I don't know why people wanted so bad to write Bernard off, but it's really nice to see the guy succeeding early. And obviously, he will have his growing pains still. He will have bad games like everybody has. But I feel even more confident now than I was before that that's a guy who can really hold down that spot. And I surely believe that's a guy who will have a C on his chest from next year on. Yes. From the point that maybe Hyde or Poyer leave, and those vacancies happen at the captaincy for the defense. I have no doubts his play and his style will translate to carry that C on the chest going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the way, or say Sean McDermott, the way he speaks about Terrel Bernard. He constantly talks about leadership, which is a big deal for Sean McDermott, and it's a big conversation to have for a player that's in just his second season, playing with a lot of veteran players. Like, to say Terrel Bernard has high-level leadership qualities when he plays on the same side of the ball as Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and Matt Milano, like all these veterans, that just tells me he's able to lead them. The fact that he has the green dot on his helmet, which honestly I didn't expect, I love that it's happening now, just goes to show that he's able to do that. So when you talk about the C on his chest, I completely agree with you that probably next year we're going to see that C slapped on his chest, which again just goes back to all the things like I think you've probably seen with him over the past year as well. He seems to just be this very well-rounded player that is exactly who Sean McDermott looks for in a football player, as well as essentially a man off the football field, from my understanding. And it's just good to see a guy like him succeed, especially after everyone wrote him off. Like, people literally just wrote him off the second he was drafted, and it'll never kind of not baffle me that the Bills fans were just like, oh, this guy stinks, while they fall in love with practice squad players that'll never see the light of day, and they're like, this guy would change the team, change the league. It's like, what the heck's going on?
True, man. And even about Bernard's behavior, the way he carries himself, because I don't know, from distance, obviously I'm not part of the team, I'm not in the locker room to see how he behaves, but it seems like he's not a guy who's very loud, at least in the sense of, let me give you an example. I remember during this offseason, Chris Brown was talking to Steve Tasker in one of those official Bills website podcasts, and they were talking about Chris Brown saying, I was watching the practice and Tyrel Dodson was sitting on the sideline and he was looking right at me, and I looked at him and I was like, what's going on? And Dodson told me, don't write me off, look out for me, I'm coming, don't write me off. And I was like, oh, that's a guy who's an alpha, that's a guy who's gonna take the command of this defense, and he's gonna be a great piece. And then they started to say great things about Dodson, nothing against the guy, okay, but man, Bernard showcases his leadership, and he talks when he gotta talk, like on the field, communicating, position, getting people in position. Like Eric from Cover One showed on his film study how he was in a third and long, calling Milano a vet, calling Terrell Johnson a vet. Oh, let's take some steps behind here. It's a third and long. Let's position ourselves in a good situation to make a play in this third down. And so that's the kind of behavior of a true leader gotta have, because he came into the league with well-established players ahead of him in Tremaine Edmonds, the defensive leader, the team captain since he came in. right? The
Mhm.
transition from Kyle Williams to Tremaine Edmonds was real when he was a rookie. And then Milano, well established. So he was there, the rookie, learning, but that didn't make him less of an alpha, less of a leader that he already was in Baylor. It just showcases how he could shut up, learn, put up the work, and be ready for his opportunity. And when it arrived, he didn't get it because he was telling things to the media members or because he was trying to be so loud on the practice field that
Mhm.
that it doesn't even matter. No, he got his shot after everybody due to injury, and he's showcasing on the field how kind of a leader he is and how he can celebrate with Josh Allen and how he can
Yeah.
lead this defense. So that's what I really love about Bernard so far.
Yeah, he's not that rah-rah guy. He's not that super loud, constantly talking, constantly screaming linebacker. He reminds me a lot of Matt Milano in that way. Milano's quiet. Like, you basically never see Matt Milano do interviews. He doesn't really talk that much. But when he goes out on the football field, that like energy exudes from him, right? Like, he starts the second he makes a hit, you see him screaming, flexing, all this stuff, but you don't ever see him off the field talking. Bernard seems to be that similar style player, not just like mentally and emotionally, but also physically as well. They both kind of just like look like two little Matt Milanos running around out there with just high level instincts, a great knowledge of the game, a good enough athletic base to compete in the NFL. It's pretty impressive to watch. And then one thing you said I want to kind of go back to too, Josh Allen hyping up Bernard on the sideline, that to me means just so much. It means so much because Josh Allen now has confidence in this guy. And if Josh Allen has confidence in him, I'm going to buy into him even more. I really just, can't be impressed all that much more than what I saw from him last week. And I really think the Bills might have found essentially a diamond in the rough here. Maybe this is the missing piece that this defense has been missing for the past, 3 years or so. And that's not taking anything away from Tremaine Edmonds. I thought Tremaine Edmonds was great. I was on the Tremaine Edmonds bandwagon, upset when he left, understood why he left. But now it's a different era, and it might just be the Terrel Bernard era.
Absolutely, man. I want to showcase here. Let me throw on the screen, but I'll read it obviously for people just listening on the podcast. But because I'm sure, and so a lot of people are like, okay, guys, we can see it right now, or Bernard is showcasing it. But from where did we take all this confidence on Bernard? And I want to showcase on one of the tweets that I tweeted a long time ago with some things that I tweeted it right after the draft, if I'm not mistaken, because people were talking a lot about Dorian taking over, and I was like, it makes no sense. And I put up some of the scout notes on Bernard before his draft, right? And for example, if you don't like, I erased the name just to make people think, then you don't like smart team leaders who can run. It's that simple. Man, we totally saw it in the last game, and we've been seeing this from Bernard in the last few games. Another scouts rave about his leadership and character, never quit attitude despite adversity. Film junkie who rung up 100 plus tackles in 2019, 2021. Rep wrote a response against play action. On a continuous quest to get to the football, loose and fluid, pursue change of direction, bends and flattens off the corner as a blitzer, speed to cover man targets underneath. So a lot of this stuff we can already see in his game so far in his young career as a Bills starter. On-field presence adds energy. He celebrates with teammates when big plays are made, just like you said about Allen hyping him up and him hyping up Allen on the silence. At times he's directing traffic pre-snap. We could see it on the tape again. Communicating calls in his front, leads by example, something that we are talking right now. As a key cog of this defense, and he's more than willing to play special teams. So a lot of those notes translate, man. And the last one here, overall an energetic linebacker who has box presence, he can cover well, has very good processing skills, and is quick to diagnose and penetrate against the run. He's good overall athlete, not elite in terms of play speed. He's undersized, but he can impact the game against the run and covered in as a blitzer. He should make excellent special teams player who can easily earn defensive snaps due to good fundamental play and insatiable work ethic. Man, these kind of scouting reports, man, those are the things that really translate well to a linebacker in the next level, because if he has the athletic ability, and if he's a film junkie, he's a guy who studies a lot, man, he'll be in good position, and we can see him. He's always around the ball, even against the Jets when people were still on that trend of, oh, I want to blame everything on Terrel Bernard, and there were a lot of people saying bad things about his game against the Jets. Man, I looked at the game, and all I could see was a poised guy, a guy who looked like a veteran in the middle of the defense, communicating, always around the ball. Okay, sometimes he wasn't the first one to get the tackle, or sometimes it wasn't behind the line of scrimmage, but he was always around the ball. The reason Rodgers had to hold that ball when he got injured was because Bernard took away two routes in the middle of the field. So reading well, playing good zone defense. We could see all those traits that I just read to you here in Terrel Bernard's early career so far. Those are the things that translate really well. And I think I already said something like this in one of my previous leading the charts, and so. But another linebacker that I was really high on, and unfortunately this one I didn't hit, was Kelvin Shepard back in the day, because those same things were said about Kelvin Shepard, about leadership, film study. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is Bernard is a modern guy. He's more like, he excels covering, and he might be in trouble because of his size. Shepard was the opposite. He was a thumper, so he had problems where we really expected him to have in coverage. So, but the mental part, the leadership, and nowadays Shepard is coaching linebackers for the Lions, if I'm not mistaken. I saw in a Hard Knocks. So I'm really confident Bernard will continue to grow, man, and I was that confident on him because all those traits, I couldn't see it not translating to the NFL field,
Yeah, and all those scouting reports, like the one thing that just stuck out to me, and for people listening, like I didn't know those scouting reports were going up, so I didn't previously study or read any of them, but they're consistent. All of them say similar things. And to me, that just goes to show how evident all those traits are. And two things stick out to me about Terrel Bernard, especially in the scouting reports and especially everything I've heard about him within the Bills locker room itself. We know he's undersized. Like, that's not debatable. He is a smaller guy, and he looks small. Like, he looks slim, and that's a concern if you're a middle linebacker in the NFL trying to go up against 330-pound guards that are getting to the second level. The way you mitigate that is you constantly study film. You understand film. You know more about their offense than their offense knows about their offense. And Matt Milano does the same exact thing. That's why you can see Milano hitting gaps before the play has even really started, because he knows the play. The same thing's happening with Terrel Bernard, and I feel like having those two people that are quote-unquote film junkies, like that's how they're both described. People talk about Milano as he's constantly in the film room. I guarantee you Bernard's right there with him and has been there with him for over a year, doing it professionally as an NFL player, and now he's doing it this season where it's going to be extremely helpful. You look how he played against the Commanders. You look how he played against the Raiders. And even when you go back to that Jets game, again, people want to blame Bernard for a lot of the Bills' shortcomings. Like that Breece Hall run, Bernard kind of hit the wrong gap on that. You're going to make a mistake from time to time, but also the Bills just missed tackles. So it's not just on Bernard. It's 11 people on defense. But when you have one guy like Bernard, in reality, two like Bernard, and Bernard and Matt Milano in the center of your defense that know the opponent so well, you're just going to play good football. And that's why, for instance, in this upcoming Dolphins game, I'm confident that the best part of the Bills' defense against the Dolphins is going to be those two linebackers that the Dolphins have not faced any style like them yet this season.
Absolutely. And when you talk about Milano, that's the thing, man. I think that's the main thing that made me fall in love early with Bernard and the scouting reports, because I was like, okay, I liked Edmonds. I like him, obviously. But if I could have Edmonds and Milano, or if I could have two Milanos, what would I pick? And probably I would pick two Milanos, because Milano is awesome, right? And I know Milano isn't as big as Edmonds, and obviously there are some shortcomings that are gonna come because of the lack of size. But I really believe the Bills, they measure all of the pros and cons, and they can live with some of those shortcomings if they are getting this playmaking that they are getting so far from Bernard and Milano. That's a good change, a good trade, in my opinion. So RJ just told him, I think the Bills figured out they could just use two outside linebackers, supposed to have a true middle. They're using Bernard and Milano like they use Poyer and Hyde. They are interchangeable. That's the thing that I always preached, man. Having an interchangeable piece alongside Milano, and Bernard really is that guy. He's this kind. We could see in the last few games how they are showing blitz, and then the other one blitzes, and one of them drops in coverage. How they can use both in similar ways, and that's not exactly the same way as they used Edmonds, where you like opposing offense, they were kind of aware that, okay, Adams is going to be this presence in the middle of the field, trying to cover some gaps, some passing lanes with his huge wingspan. So you had a preferable way of using both of those players. Now with Milano and Bernard, you don't know who's coming to the blitz, who's covering, who's running with the running back, who's covering the tight end. You can do everything with both of them. And just like you said, man, the film study part, we could see already Bernard calling out plays and attacking the gaps before the runs were the plays were made. So it's awesome to watch, and I can't wait to watch more of it. And even Terrell Johnson. Terrell Johnson is kind of a weak side linebacker in our base defense, right? And when I always thought about Bernard as another Milano, but if you look at the way Terrell Johnson plays, Terrell Johnson is a smaller Bernard, man.
That's a really good point.
Right, they are very aggressive shooting gaps. The way they tackle is similar, very aggressive. Sometimes it's gonna result in some missed tackles because the way they are so aggressive tackling and going for this tackle. It's not like always wrapping up with huge arms like Edmonds, and even Dorian. Dorian seems like a mini Edmonds, the way he tackles with those long arms. But those guys are gonna make plays. Those guys are gonna be aggressive. They're gonna make your life really difficult if you are an opposing player in an opposing offense, and I'm really happy with the way the Bills defense has played so far, and I can't replace those three guys for any other player maybe because of the way they play in these McDermott's defense schemes,
Yeah, the interchangeability is a really important part of this whole entire design of the middle of the Bills defense too. That point should not go understated because you have Bernard, you have Milano. It creates confusion for the quarterback pre-snap. The quarterback doesn't know who's doing what, where previously with Edmonds, it was more clear. You understood that if one of them was really going to blitz, it was going to be Milano out like towards the tackle. It was more often than not going to be Edmonds is going to drop back in coverage. That's where he's going to sit. He's going to sit in the middle. He's not really going to move to the outside of the field. With Milano, Bernard, as well as Teron Johnson, who you brought up, the Bills can just start moving people all over the place, and it confuses even the best quarterbacks in the NFL, which, to be fair, the Bills really haven't faced a great quarterback yet this season. They're about to face a pretty good one on Sunday, but having the ability to move those players in and out of different positions or all around the field, it just makes the defense holistically better. So in theory, somebody could say to me, and I would tend to agree with this right now, Tremaine Edmonds is a better linebacker than Terrel Bernard. At this point in time, I would 100% agree with that. But I think that Terrel Bernard in this defense, because of that interchangeability, holistically makes the defense better this year than it was last year. And I think that that's more important to me as having a great defense than having a great player.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree. And we can start maybe the transition to the preview for this Bills-Dolphins matchup because, as you said, we're going to face a pretty good quarterback, a pretty good offense, obviously. And the same way as the Bills hasn't faced a top-notch quarterback yet, or Rodgers just for a few snaps. Yeah. I don't believe the Dolphins offense has faced anything like this group of linebackers, and we can put even Terrell Johnson in this second-level group of guys. They haven't seen this kind of group cover in the middle of the field. That's a big part of what Tua and McDaniels and that offense does. So what are you expecting about, first of all, with the Dolphins passing game and the way they attack the middle of the field, the responsibility for Bernard, for Milano, for Tyrone, it's going to be a big task for them, right?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Like I'm never going to disrespect the Dolphins because the speed is out of this world. I've never seen anything like this before. And I've been watching the NFL my entire life. I've never seen speed like this on one team, and speed at getting rid of the football. He's essentially the Dolphins have essentially made it impossible to pressure Tua Tagovailoa. Like you can't get to him. He gets rid of the ball too quickly, and he almost always does it over the middle. Why we're talking about Bernard and Milano and Teron Johnson is because that middle of the field is where those three guys are going to live this week. And I do not believe that the Dolphins have faced anything like that yet this season. So it's going to be a test assuredly for the Bills. Like this is not going to be an easy game. I could see the Dolphins winning. Like you could make that argument to me and I'd be like, yep, that makes sense. But I think that those linebackers and Teron Johnson are going to be the key pieces. Can they slow down Tyreek Hill? Can they slow down Jalen Waddle? Can they affect to a pre-snap and force him to make mistakes post-snap? If they can do that, it doesn't mean they're going to shut out the Dolphins, but if they can just contain them, keep them below 30 points, then you're talking about the Bills having a really good shot to win this game.
Yeah, man, and even now with Poyer that's out of the game, Poyer was just ruled out by Coach McDermott. So probably Taylor Rapp being the replacement. But that's another guy who, despite having a lot of experience and he's a great tackler, what I think works really well with this matchup, we got to tackle well against the Dolphins and minimize those gains, especially yards after catch. But man, it's another guy who's a little bit challenged in the speed department against a lot of speedsters from this Dolphins offense. If you can really trust Bernard, Milano, and Tyron Johnson to kind of be able to patrol that middle of the field, and you don't need to help them a lot with the safeties, that improves the Bills' chances on the defensive side of the ball, because it's easy to say, okay, take away the middle of the field and Tua can't pass on the sidelines. But that's not really true because, yeah, he lacks the velocity, the big-time arm to throw those darts on the sidelines, but he can throw those deep shots, those deep floaters to Tyreek Hill, to Waddle on the sidelines. And if you keep them on one-on-one on the sideline and cover the middle of the field and use safety help to cover the middle of the field, those guys on the sidelines will be exposed. And there is Notre Dame's wide. There is no Benford and even Kyle Elam, who's supposed to be our faster cornerback on the roster. Nobody can run with those guys, with Tyreek Hill, Waddle. Nobody in the league can run with those guys. So if you give them one-on-ones there, they're gonna take those big plays home, right? So if Bernard, if Milano, if Tyron Johnson, they can hold their own on the middle of the field, mostly by themselves. Obviously, it's not all 100% of the time, but for the majority of the time, I can see good things happening with our cornerbacks having a little safety help over the top and maybe Tua holding the ball a little bit longer, what we haven't seen this year. That's the key. And our defensive line arriving at Tua and being able to make an impact as they have made against the Commanders, for example.
Yeah, I mean the hope, the like perfect scenario is that Tua holds the ball, and if he holds the ball for 3.5, 4 seconds, then Greg Rousseau, then Leonard Floyd, then Ed Oliver, then Daquan Jones are going to get pressure on him. I think that the Dolphins offensive line has been really overhyped going into this game. Like people are acting like the Dolphins have a really good offensive line. There's all these advanced metrics that show that they're not giving up pressures. Well, they're not giving up pressures because Tua gets rid of the ball in 2 seconds. So they don't really have to block. They just have to kind of stand in the way of people, and they're doing their job. But the second they get into these one-on-one extended play situations, that's where the Bills are going to have a massive advantage in the trenches and should be able to affect Tua if they can get him to hold the football. So that goes back to that middle of the field, controlling the middle of the field, and then trusting your corners on the outside with safety help to protect from those deep throws is going to be incredibly important. Again, I don't think we're not going to leave this game and say, oh my gosh, the Bills defense just completely stifled the Dolphins. But if they can find a ways to affect them, if they can steal a couple possessions, whether that be forcing turnovers, forcing a field goal, forcing a quick 3 and out, or stopping them on 4th down, stealing those possessions will go a long way in the Bills leaving this game atop the AFC East.
Yeah, man, and the Bills defense, they've been awesome this year, and a lot has been said about Leslie Frazier leaving and the changes with McDermott. I think we've been able to see a more aggressive defense, even against the run. We can see how they shoot the gaps and kill runs even before it could get to the line of scrimmage. So it was really impressive against the Raiders. Again, great job against the Commanders. And I think the least impressive they looked was against Zach Wilson, and they had no game plan for that, right? They were like totally prepared for a game against Aaron Rodgers, and then boom, 2 offensive drives, and Zach Wilson is out there. So it's also difficult to deal with this change in approach and the game plan for some guys. But I really believe that's a game that's going to tell a lot to us about this defense, man. I have no questions about this defense being one of the best in the league, as it has been also. It was with Leslie Frazier also in the last couple of years, top ranked unit in 1 year, top 5 in the other year, and we saw good performances in the regular season. But I always felt like, again, 13 seconds game. I had that game like a game that Josh Allen won twice in the last 2 minutes, and the defense gave it away 3 times in the last 2 minutes and overtime, So there were some games against top-notch competition that I felt, man, this defense is supposed to be a top unit. They are a top unit, but they aren't a top unit against the top offense, And it's difficult nowadays against top offenses in the NFL because of the rules, because the way the game is played. It's really difficult for defenses to lead the team to a championship like they could do in the past. We just saw how the Eagles tried to hold down the Chiefs last Super Bowl, but they couldn't for long, right? And the 49ers has had great defenses recently, and again, another defense that at some point they can't win a game for that team. So I just feel like the game is going that direction right now, and you've got to have a top offensive unit. But I expect a top unit like the Bills to be able to not shoot out the Dolphins, or just like you said, if they can keep the Dolphins under 30, and if they can create some turnovers, right, some big plays, get off the field on third downs, man, it's going to be more than enough to give the Bills offense, which a lot of people are overlooking and are arguing about, but it's still a top 5 unit, and we still have 17 under center. So they just got to play well and create some turnovers, and I want to see Tua being confused a little bit, holding that ball. I want to see McDermott really being able to impact this game with the way he game plans for this offense. That's what I'm curious to check in this game, and that's the biggest key, in my opinion, to be able to keep up with this high-powered offense, Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Leslie Frazier, he's a very good defensive coordinator. I don't think there's any debate about that. But at times, the defense is just sitting back a little bit too much and letting the game come to them. Sean McDermott is calling a very similar defense, but he's also picking and choosing the spots where he's going at the opposing team. And I think that's one of the key differences that we're seeing this year with Sean McDermott. Again, we're only 3 games into the season, so it still remains to be seen how this defense will continue to evolve throughout the year. But with that in mind, Sean McDermott, I trust more to create a game plan, to create an elite game plan against an elite offense like the Dolphins than I do trust Leslie Frazier. So this week going to this game, I have more confidence because I know there's going to be points in this game where Sean McDermott does weird things that no one's going to expect, whether that be something like, oh, we're going to drop 8 into coverage. We're only going to rush 3. We're going to see if Tua can basically guess where Greg Rousseau is dropping into coverage. We're going to send Matt Milano on a blitz, and we're going to rotate Teron Johnson into the middle. We're going to do things that are literally meant to confuse Tua. And McDermott has a proven track record of doing this. I think people forget that as well. It's not just like Sean McDermott's never called defensive plays. He called them for Carolina, and he was really, really good at that. And now he's doing the same thing for the Bills. I do think that it's an upgrade over Leslie Frazier, and that's saying something because, again, I think Leslie Frazier is one of the most brilliant defensive minds in the NFL. And if I'm saying we have an upgrade this year, then what's Sean McDermott? But essentially a defensive mastermind. So this week is going to be a massive test for his defense because we've seen them literally dominate essentially 3 opponents. Granted, they still somehow found a way to lose to Zach Wilson, but the past 2 weeks they've just like been a buzzsaw. Like the Commanders weren't doing anything that entire game. Yeah, they might move the ball a little bit, but the Bills were picking and choosing these spots where they're going to make massive plays. I think that this is the week where we're going to figure out truly what is Sean McDermott's defense, and we're also going to figure out how really good is this Dolphins offense.
Yeah, man. When you talked about the speed of this offense, man, it just reminded me Madden. When you scroll down 99 speed, and then you have all the guys with 90 something speed, and man, McDaniel's was he's playing Madden in real life. Like, give me all the 95 plus speed guys, and I'm gonna create a nice offense, and it's working just fine for him. And about Tua, man, I'm not the biggest Tua fan. I used to have a lot of questions about him. And again, it's not about scouting the helmet and not the player, but just like I used to have my doubts with USC quarterbacks, because they always played behind great offensive lines, throwing the best playmakers in college football, and just handing out to the best running backs in college football. I feel like there is a transition time to those quarterbacks to go to the next level and start to realize, like, okay, my teammates aren't that dominant anymore, and I gotta do something by myself right now. And I feel like Alabama quarterbacks have been those kind of guys recently, and obviously Tua used it to throw to great wide receivers when he was at Bama, and had also awesome offensive line, great running backs. He had a tough start. I believe he even played before he was supposed to play. That was a Fitzpatrick's team. They didn't need to move on, and they did it. So it was a bad decision. But it seems that McDaniels really found a way to, okay, that's what he can do. That's what he can't do. Let's maximize what he can do. Let's hide a little bit of something that he can't, and let's get this guy going. Let's put the right pieces around him. And man, it's impressive the numbers he has put up so far this season. How do you see Tua being an X factor in this matchup?
Yeah, I'm going to just go to something I heard Ryan Fitzpatrick say a couple of years ago on I think it was a podcast, maybe the start of last year or something. So Ryan Fitzpatrick was talking about elite quarterbacks in the NFL. All elite quarterbacks have something that sets them apart from everybody else. You look at Josh Allen and you just talk about arm strength, like freakish arm strength that is the tops of the tops in the world at what he does. Yeah. On top of that, you have the ability to make plays like off script, move outside the pocket, run with the football. Like, Allen has those traits. Then you go look at Tua. Tua doesn't have those. He doesn't have a very strong arm. He's not this physical freak that can truck a defender. But what he is this incredible anticipatory thrower. He's got an incredible football IQ, and he is very accurate. He can put the ball where he wants to put the ball. If it's within 20 yards, he's always going to hit his spot. And that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick said. If Tua is going to be successful in this NFL, you have to leverage that skill set. And Mike McDaniel, to his credit, came in and is absolutely leveraging it in the most perfect way. This offense was designed for Tua. It was designed for the skill players on that team. And that's not to take anything away from Tua. I think a lot of Dolphins fans hear that, to hear like, oh, this offense was designed for Tua. You're just saying he's a game manager. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you've built something perfectly for a player that has elite skill sets at very specific things. Tua can be an X factor because of that. He's going to find a way to get Tyreek Hill the ball, even if the Bills quadruple teamed him. Like, he's going to be able to put the ball in a spot where nobody else can get it. For that reason, I think like Tua could outduel Josh Allen on Sunday. Like, that wouldn't surprise me. I expect Josh Allen to play a really good game, but I think a lot of Bills fans need to kind of take away their Tua hate, let's say, and realize like this guy's a good quarterback. Like, he is good. And he's elite at very specific things.
Yeah, man. And this offense, Marcel is the dad of the Irmãos Sapequinhas, okay? Irmãos Sapequinhas is like the saucy little brother, something like that, okay? He's afraid of outside zone running plays. Yeah, that's the base of Shanahan offense, and obviously McDaniels too. And, man, the Bills used to have some trouble, but this season and this defense, I think it's built to deal with this. With the speed we have in the front seven, yes, our defensive backfield isn't the fastest one, but our front seven, man, we have some speed there. And I'm really impressed by the way our defensive line has played so far, Hansel, because without Von Miller, it was a big question mark for me early in the season. I was like, okay, let's see how those guys, how did they spend their off season and how did they improve? Because if I was frustrated at something last year after the Bengals game, it was about how our defensive line couldn't take advantage of those backups offensive linemen playing for the Bengals, and then they come back this year without Von Miller so far, and they are killing it. They are playing very well. The entire rotation. Puna Ford is being inactive sometimes because Settle is ready to contribute. Boogie Basham was the guy who looked the best, in my opinion, during the preseason, and he got traded because the other guys were ready too. So they're doing an awesome job. Can't wait to have Von Miller back, but I really believe our defensive line can have a great impact in this game. And they, just like you said, their offensive line, they're playing well. But remember when we had the cold front and we were hugely excited about, we built the cold front and we're gonna kill Brady today and let's go. And then Bills and Patriots and Brady getting rid of the ball in under 2 seconds, and Mario and Darius, Kyle, nobody could get to Brady, and it was like, oh my God, what's going on, man? And I think we need to be able to cover in this game to be able to get our guys an opportunity to get to Tua. But I believe they can do a good job against this run game, even though they have, again, 2 incredible fast running backs running the ball for them, right?
Yeah, I think that's where the defensive line is going to make a difference this game. I don't think it's necessarily against the pass. If they can get to Tua, that's great, but I'm not going to expect that because it has to be proven before I have to see it before I'll believe it. But where I think the defensive line can make a massive difference is just winning up front. If they're constantly winning up front, when the Dolphins do run it, they're going to be running right into Ed Oliver's arms. Like if Ed Oliver keeps playing like he is, if Greg Rousseau keeps playing like he is, whatever run concepts the Dolphins come up with, it's going to allow the linebackers, the corners to actually sit on their heels and worry about the pass, worry about Tyreek Hill, worry about Jalen Waddle. And if they're able to focus on that while the defensive line just keeps winning in the trenches, then the Bills essentially can make the Dolphins be this one-dimensional team. And I think that's really their goal. Like the Dolphins are going to run the ball. They're a good running football team too. And they have a lot of auxiliary pieces like Alec Ingold, great fullback, Durham Smythe, great blocking tight end. They use those guys to open up the field, open up by getting to the linebackers, getting to the second level. The Bills are going to attempt to avoid that with a Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver in the middle. And if they can do that again, then you force Tua to throw it, which is very dangerous. But if you know he's going to throw all game, then that makes it all the much easier to defend the pass.
Yeah, man, and against the run, tackle well. And if there is something that we can say, maybe Rep is better than Poyer, maybe it's tackling him. So that's the only area I think I'm confident on Rep than Poyer, So we'll see, but I think tackling against this run game will be hugely important because the Broncos really suck trying to tackle them. We could see I was like, what's going on, man? Is there a sniper shooting people in Orange in this game? Because there are some pictures of 5, 6 guys on the ground falling. Wow. I was like, my goodness, you can't play defense like this, So it's going to be important to tackle well, to minimize those gains. And I'm looking forward to watching the game plan for this matchup. But Hansel, no matter what, okay, the Bills defense won't be able to alone beat the Dolphins, and we have the other matchup, the other way around. We have 17, we have a great offense. And how about this Miami Dolphins defense? Because, Fangio was the huge addition for this defense, and Ramsey is obviously injured so far. He can't play. But I don't know, man. I have a total respect for Fangio. I think he's obviously a great mind and maybe a top 5, top 3 defensive coordinator. But so far, I really don't see this defense that improved from what they had. And what they had used to be not problematic, but they had their moments against the Bills, those cover 0 looks, those mind games pre-snap against Josh. I always felt like Flores and his staff, they kind of had their moments against Josh Allen. They had their moments at creating good stuff for them, even though Josh most often than not, he put up some great numbers against the Dolphins. Fangio and his style of defense, we've seen Josh play well against those defenses in his Broncos days, and I don't know. I'm really confident the Bills can have a great offensive game against the Fins, man, and score a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Fangio's defense, heavy zone. They basically only run zone defense, and this is a massive change for the Dolphins. The Dolphins have been one of the heavier man defenses
Mhm.
in seasons past, and that's actually where Xavier Howard excels. Like that's where he plays best. You put him one on one with a dude, like he's gonna win more often than he's gonna lose. Now they're saying, oh, sit back in zone. That's a change for Xavier Howard. That's a change for how this kind of defense was built roster wise, and it's also going to take time for them to learn Fangio's defense. It's really complex. It's a lot of communication, a lot of learning, and a similar style that Sean McDermott's is. That doesn't get done in 1 week, doesn't get done over a summer. That usually is probably going to take about a year. So next year is where I think you'll probably see the Dolphins defense, let's say, elevate and get better. But they need them to be good this year. And I don't really think they're a great defense. They have great playmakers on that team, but they're not a great defense right now. You have Christian Wilkins, you have Xavier Howard, you have Javon Holland. Like I really like Jerome Baker, their middle linebacker. Bradley Chubb,
Steeler.
maybe he'll be a thing one day. Like there's all these, it's surprising. We go full circle here. I talked about Tremaine Edmonds being a great player, but our defense holistically maybe being better without him. So I'd rather have a great defense than great player. Right now, the Dolphins defense is made of great players, but it's not a great defense.
Yeah, man, and that's a great point about for Bills fans. Just what we've seen Kyrie Irving struggling to learn in this Bills defense. A guy who played man a lot in college, and maybe if you ask your cornerback to man up a guy and mirror this guy until the end of the play, maybe Kyrie Irving still is the best cornerback in our roster, even better than Trev maybe with the tools he has to work with. But that's not what the Bills play most of the time, and we see Elon struggling or even on getting on the field. The Dolphins' entire defense needs to deal with this change of approach, change of schemes, and so it's not so easy. It's not like a quick approach, a quick turnaround, and magically everybody's communicating really well and passing guys to other people's zone. It's not the way it happens in real life. So it's not Madden, guy. You can play zone or man, and that's it. So it's really interesting point. And yeah, I feel like our offense has a nice advantage in this matchup. I think the Dolphins have some good players on this side of the ball, but especially with the way our offensive line has played, because again, the same thing I said about the defensive line, man, about the Bills defensive line, I repeat about our offensive line. The biggest question mark was how's our offensive line going to play going forward? How's Spencer Brown going to hold up or not? How about McGovern? First real opportunity as a full-time starter, right? And the rookie Torrance, man, they couldn't have been playing better than they are playing right now. And even with Spencer Brown, I believe he has still his shortcomings, but they found a way to third and long. We've seen those empty backfields with Latavius Murray lining up alongside Spencer Brown and chipping the defensive end before leaving for a check down option. So they found some answers for our struggles with the offensive line, and even the run game started to be more consistent. We can see the guys, the power guys like Murray, like Harris, being hammers early on, and late in the games, James Cook has dominated, and he's running over 6 yards per carry right now. So it's been awesome, man. I can't remember I'm pretty sure Josh Allen hasn't had a balanced offense around him as much as he has right now. The last time the Bills could run the ball that well was with Tyrod Taylor under center, probably. So it's great to see, and that makes all the difference in the world, because the last few games against the Dolphins and against a lot of our top competition or biggest rivals, it's already seemed like Josh Allen versus that other defense, because it looked like we were wasting plays trying to run the ball and negative yards, penalties. And all the time it was on Josh Allen's arm and Stephon Diggs getting open, and that was the game. And now it's different. It seems like we can finally run the ball. We can finally put Josh in a good situation, and we really don't depend 100% on him anymore.
Yeah, I think you're completely spot on here with what's around Josh. I think this is the best offense that Josh has had around him in his entire career. Since the Josh Allen era, there hasn't been a more complete offense than what we have right now. And a lot of that starts up front with the offensive line, which has been an issue for years and years and years. And the Bills have tried to fix it, but it just hasn't worked. So now they bring in Connor McGovern. Now they draft Osiris Torrance. And all of a sudden, you're looking at an offensive line that's starting to mesh, where Deion Dawkins is still playing really good football. Mitch Morse is playing really good football. And they're finding ways now to protect Spencer Brown, which is extremely important. You mentioned Latavius Murray chipping. They do the same thing with Dawson Knox. Like, just give him a little nudge so that Spencer Brown can get his paws on the player, and then Spencer Brown can win his matchup, which it stinks that we don't have like a all-pro right tackle plan for the Bills, but they don't need that. You're not going to have an all-pro at every position. So when you have a player with deficiencies, you find a way to mitigate those deficiencies, which is what the Bills have done. And on top of that, right now, the way Josh Allen's been playing since week one, we'll just ignore the fact that game even existed. He's getting rid of the ball quick. He's doing a very similar thing that Tua is doing, where it's like, take your steps back, identify an open receiver, deliver him the ball, even if it's a 5-yard pass. And what that does is it reduces pressure. It beats up the opposing defensive line too, and it wears them down slowly throughout the game, where at the end, you can just hand the ball to James Cook and he's running free for, 20, 30 yards a pop. I really think that this Bills offense also hasn't reached remotely close to its potential. We haven't seen the whole bag of tricks unleashed. And if there's ever a game for them to unleash Josh Allen, let's say, take, the collar off just a little bit, loosen it up, let him throw the ball downfield every once in a while. This is the game, because if there's one team Josh Allen beats the snot out of, it's the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. And I hope it continues this way, brother. I hope it continues this way for a long time, right? Yes. Man, to close this one out, man, give me just the top matchup on offense, the top matchup on offense to watch, and the top matchup on defense to watch, in your opinion. Bills Dolphins, what's the matchup that you really are looking forward to watching and you believe can be the key for this game? And obviously, final prevail, they score.
Yeah. On the defensive side of the ball for the Bills, I'm going to go back to the start of the show. It's Terrel Bernard and how he can defend the middle of the field. And that means when Tyreek Hill comes flying through, and when Jalen Waddle, and when Braxton Berrios, when all these fast, quick little dudes come through, where is Terrel Bernard? Is he affecting the play? Is he confusing Tua? He's my key to this game, as crazy as it sounds. Terrel Bernard is the key to beating the Dolphins and taking first place in the AFC East. On the other side of the ball, this is going to sound like a weird one, but it's Josh Allen versus Javon Holland. Javon Holland's been playing incredible football. He's got 33 tackles this year, which is a wild number for a safety. Holland's going to be tasked when Josh ultimately escapes the pocket and trying to run for a first down when it's 3rd and 15. Holland's going to have to come up and make a play. Can Josh make Holland look like a fool on the ground and also through the air? If Holland starts biting forward, don't be surprised if Gabe Davis is running deep and Josh Allen throws up a 60-yard bomb to him. So it's Holland versus Allen on the offensive side of the ball, Terrel Bernard versus the middle of the field on the defensive side of the ball. For a prediction for me, going 28-24 Bills. It could go either way too. You could flip that score, and I'd be like, "Yep, okay, fine, yeah, the Dolphins could." But I just think it's in Buffalo's house. Buffalo has a little bit more of a chip on its shoulder right now, and with the Dolphins coming off a 70-point game and feeling themselves a little bit, getting maybe a little bit too cocky, I could see the Bills putting them in their place come Sunday.
Awesome. Renan is asking if Waddle is going to play. I believe so. He was cleared from the protocol. And Miami Fan Talk, shout out for them. It's a good sign, okay? Because before the Raiders game, there was a Raiders fan out there talking a lot about how the Raiders would smack the Bills, and I was really happy with that talk, okay? But Miami Fan Talk show has been really respectful so far, so shout out to him. And those are his main matchups: Diggs on X and Hill against your entire defense. Makes sense. I won't go Bernard because you went there, but obviously, just like we talked in the beginning of the show, right? And yes, I'm curious to see how Davis White, how Banford, how those guys can play against those awesome and fast wide receivers. So that's a key matchup in my opinion. And on the offensive side, I'd go Kincaid against those linebackers. Especially against zone defense. I think maybe that can be a big time game for Kincaid against this zone defense, finding some spots in the middle of that zone defense and moving the chains consistently. He can be a huge weapon for Josh Allen there. And my prediction will be, I think the Bills score more than 30 points this weekend.
Okay.
So I'm going to go 34-28 because I really have total respect for this offensive, this Dolphins offense. But just like you said, Hansel, this game can be both ways. It's a big time matchup. It's definitely a game that should have been a primetime game. And obviously we hate the Dolphins and they hate us, but it's good to have this rivalry back again. And
yeah.
After so many years with the Patriots believing they were more than they really are. So it's good to have them back in their right place and to have the real AFC contenders competing again. So looking forward to this game, and it's going to be fun. And man, I really appreciate you taking your time being with us today, leading the charge. Doors will be always wide open when you want to join. Feel free to hit me up. I will be hitting you up to be in the show more often, and I really appreciate you taking your time, man.
Yeah, I love it, man. Like I said, talking football at noon on a Friday is awesome. I thought this conversation went really well and smooth. I'm really happy we got to do our victory lap too about Terrel Bernard. So all the people that have hated on him for a year can listen to this, and we can have big smiles on our face.
We had to do that. Oh my God. Yeah. Thank you so much, brother. And thank you to all Mafia and even the Things fans who were present here today. And smash that like button, subscribe to Buffalo Rumblings channel. And I'll be back on Sunday with the post-game show, totally in Portuguese, then to Brazilian and Latin America, Portuguese-speaking countries, with the post-show right after the game, Bills and Dolphins. So see you around. Thank you so much, Bills Mafia. And always go Bills.
Go Bills.